Good morning. On this my birthday, I'm standing on my local metro station about to set off on my journey to York. So it's a little bit cloudy. There's one or two breaks in the sky, so hopefully it will get out later in the day, and I'm looking forward to a good day. See you soon.
The next train at platform 1 is for Southfield.
Well, we made it just the central station metro stop, so I'm now heading for my train. Metro was late, so I've only just made it in time, but hopefully I can get my train and off to York. Well, hello everybody. Here I am on Newcastle Central Station. I've had to come along to the end of the platform because the racket back there with the station announcements and the various trains standing, I couldn't hear myself speak. So it's supposed to be sunny today. However, here in Newcastle it's grey, overcast, and there's a bit of drizzle. So I hope that improves when we get to York. Although it's my birthday today and yet another year older, I just wanted to say that one advantage of getting old is your travel passes. I'm very fortunate that I live quite close to a metro station. So I don't have to walk very far to be able to travel on the metro. And the metro pass costs me £12 a year for unlimited travel, not only on the metro but also on the local bus services. So that is a massive bonus. And of course today I'm using my senior rail card, which gets me 30% off. And here in the background is an LNER going to Edinburgh, opposite way to where I'm going. So when I book rail travel, I always book first class. I just think at my age I deserve a little bit of luxury, and the LNER first class is superb. Of course you get fed, you've got a quiet coach, comfortable seat, and it's just worth well, it doesn't cost me any extra because by the time I've got me 30% discount, that's the same as if I bought a standard ticket. So I'll be going. I'm not. People don't like you filming on the train, so I probably won't be able to do any footage on the train. So the next stop is York, and I'm looking forward to that. So I'll see you again in a few moments.
on board this LNER Azuma to London King's Cross.
Well, here we are on the LNER service to London King's Cross, and I'm only going as far as York, so not far to go. And I'm just waiting for my bacon roll and my cup of tea.
Thank you for travelling with LNER.
This side of the line, mate. You're on the wrong side of the line, mate. This way.
Well, here we are in York. Extremely busy. Beautiful station, and as I said, a fantastic train, the LNER. Well, here we are in York. There's little patches of blue sky, so the sun is actually trying to get out. Yes, as I was saying, LNER is a fantastic rail company. I love travelling on LNER. I can never remember which train company my grandfather used to be a train driver on. It was either LNER or LMS. Like I say, my senior years, I can never remember quite which company it was, but it was one of them anyway. But yeah, very comfortable trains, food is excellent, and I think it's a good price for what you get. Anyway, here we are in York. The city itself was first established with the Romans. There was settlements here back in Mesolithic times, but it was the Romans who really established it as an important settlement, and they ruled here for 3 centuries. They apparently, the 9th Legion with 5,000 men marched north from Lincolnshire and set up a camp here. And like I said, what followed was the establishment of a major settlement, which we now call a city. And as I said, they ruled here for 3 centuries. Back in Roman times, they called it Eboracum. And then for a brief period after they left, under the Anglo-Saxons, it was called Efferwich, which means wild boar town. Following that, and that's what I'm going to see today, the Vikings landed, and they landed in 833 AD, I think it was, and it was them who called the city Jorvik. And of course the name York is a derivative of Jorvik. I think in various medieval periods it was called Yark and Yerk and various other things, but today it is firmly called York. So as I said, I'm trying to find the Jorvik Museum, so hopefully I can find it not too far away, and I'll speak to you again shortly. Well, this is the Coppergate region of York, and I don't know whether you can see from all the flags up above, it's all advertising the Jorvik Centre. It's very colourful, and my timed ticket is for 12 o'clock. It's quite busy, but at least it's not raining. Lots of the streets in York have gate on the end of them. The Stone Gate, Micklegate, and where the Jorvik Centre is Coppergate. The reason is it comes from another Scandinavian word, gata.
Would only stand for roughly 5 to 7 years before being pulled down. Any useful building materials reclaimed, the rest covered over soil, and the new building built into place the walls on. Pretty much exactly the same thing.
Climb on in, watch your heads on the speakers, sitting back, choose your commentary from the
Thank you. Thank you.
Around the time that Eric Bloodhouse, the last Viking king in Jorvik, was banished, Jorvik expanded dramatically, with new streets, new churches, and a brand new style of houses. It was a busy place, with people arriving from all over the Viking world to visit, trade, and settle. In this multicultural society, people have different appearances, languages, religions, and possessions. The remains of part of this thriving city were found right here, and by carefully piecing together all of the archaeological evidence and what we know from other sources, you can now visit the Viking Age. You have arrived by the River Foss. Ahead lies the city with countless houses and workshops, many of them newly rebuilt, some are just damaged, a victim of an untended heartbound. As ships became more seaworthy, the Vikings created wider trading routes, sometimes using chains of middlemen to carry goods from one side of the Viking world to the other. Silks and the cowrie shell found here suggest trade with Central Asia, the Eastern Mediterranean and the Red Sea. It's possible that Arab traders like this man made their way to Europe to sell their goods. Slavers may have come to Europe from Dublin or elsewhere, bringing with them the spoils of their raids or battlements. Slaves were an important part of society all over northern and western Europe at this time. It looks like this slave trader is trying to make his way up to Coppergate. But before we get there, let's have a look at some of the many craftspeople working here in the city. Here's Sigurd. He's using animal bones and antlers and deer to make some everyday objects such as combs, comb cases, skates, and bone pins. Making a comb from antler could be very time-consuming, as the ones found here were made from many pieces riveted together and then decorated. We know that the Vikings like to keep themselves well groomed, as we found many combs in the excavations, as well as items such as tweezers and even ear screws. We'll now head away from the river towards the street, Coppergate, and meet some more of the people who lived and worked here. Ahead, you can see a simple, single-story building. These older houses were built from posts and wattle and had earth floors and thatched roofs. Most of these houses went out of use in the middle of the 10th century when they were replaced by the oak-plank buildings we'll talk about later. These early houses were built end-on to the streets and had long backyards with rubbish pits in them. It's not likely that they grew much food in the yards, but they probably kept animals, such as those pigs you can see in the pen by the fence. From the many pig bones we found here, we know that Viking pigs were quite short and had a long snout like a wild boar. Pigs will eat almost anything, so would have been a great way to turn household waste into meat. Here's the blacksmith's house. Look inside and you can see his wife by the fire. Grummy, the blacksmith, is teaching his son how to sharpen a knife he's just made. Vikings smiths were masters of their craft, and here in Jorvik they made everything from needles to beautifully ornate tools. Now we'll go across to the next property and visit his neighbour, a woodturner who lives in one of the new style wooden planked buildings. Unni is making cups and bowls by turning wood such as oak, black and his pole blade. You can see all the wooden core waste on the ground which children may have used as spinning tops. By the way, it's this trade that many think gave its name to Coppergate, the street of the cup makers. Another building is being built behind Unni's house. Here, the cellar is being dug out and lined with oak planks before the upper story is added. You can see a stack of turrets over there that are going to be used to roof this building. Looks like the buildings are having a rest though. This family also look like they're taking a break. The children are being taught to play Nefertiti by their grandfather. We found a wooden gaming room and lots of playing pieces here made from gold, wood and ivory, so it must have been a popular pastime. Let's go back towards the river where big trading ships have been that have come up from the North Sea. Here, traders are unloading their goods alongside fishermen bringing in the catch. Goods and raw materials from across Britain, as well as rare and valuable items from further afield, were brought into Jorvik free. Iron alloy bars from Britain alongside amber, sharp nose stones and walrus items from Scandinavia, and good wine from the Rhine. Jorvik was truly bustling, a vast international trading centre. Here's some fishermen cleaning their catch and mending their nets. Fish from the rivers and the sea were brought into Jorvik, and we found thousands of fish bones that tell us exactly what the people ate, which included lots of fish, eels, and even oysters. So these men are probably doing a roaring trade. Have a look at the man cutting the fish. His face has been reconstructed based on a skull that was found in the road. Later on in the visit, you'll see more real faces like this. This next plot is a backyard where the people living here seem to have been dyeing their own cloth. The people of Jorvik spun fleece, then dyed and wove their own wool to make textiles from which they made their own clothes. Natural dye plants such as madder, weld, woad and dyer's greenwood were all used to create shades of red, yellow, blue and green. Vibrantly coloured clothes which certainly have brightened up the streets of Jorvik. On this plot of land, there was a gully that contained dyed plant waste, suggesting that a dye bath had been tipped into it. Limestone lined that bit with a mirror to this next building, forming a passageway to the back door. We are now entering one of the new style oak planked buildings. We're still discussing whether these buildings were 1 or 2 story, but they all have rooms or cellars below ground level. As we travel through this 2-roomed house, You can imagine the floor at the back is being built, and you can see the cellar below where goods are stored. Above this sunken room, the window openings are only small, so, as you can see, it would have been quite dark inside these houses. In addition to the hearth, small pottery lamps and wax candles were used to create light so that the people who lived here could carry out their everyday tasks. In this front room, you can see a woman working at the loom, which was used to weave woolen cloth for clothing and blankets. We're now moving into Coppergate itself, an important commercial street right in the heart of the city of Jorvik. As you can see from these stalls, you can buy almost anything here. Coppergate is just one of the many streets in this city, which was home to more than 10,000 people. The streets of the city of Jorvik are covered in filth and mud, littered with cart wheels and with potholes everywhere. This leather worker seems to be having a problem sewing his shoe pieces together. He looks like he has Viking's disease, or Dupuytren's contraction. You can see it's caused the fingers on his hand to become clawed. It's a genetic disorder that runs in families, and seen particularly in middle-aged men. Tradition has it that it originated with the Vikings, who spread it throughout Northern Europe and beyond as they travelled and intermarried. This couple here are arguing about what to have for supper, meat or fish. It would seem that life hasn't changed too much over the last 1,000 years. They're arguing in Old Norse, but if you listen carefully, you can hear Old English, Middle Welsh and Old Irish all being spoken in this street. Here's a food seller trying to sell this wealthy-looking woman a cabbage of some sort. It doesn't look like the type of thing that would tempt her or her young baby. This woman looks like she's struggling to cross the road. We only found 2 complete skeletons in the excavations here, and this one is based on one of them. You can see that she's walking with a crutch due to her hip problems and arthritis. You can find out more about her in the galleries to come. Here, we're in another of the new buildings. The first Vikings who came here were not Christians and worshipped their pagan Norse gods, but they seem to have adopted Christianity quite quickly. There is lots of evidence for there being a Viking-era church just behind Coppergate, and there were many other new churches built in Jorvik at this time. Here's a priest administering last rites. He would always have worn a stole around his neck, as seen here, as it marked his priestly status. We found a very small, silk, pink-coloured reliquary pouch in one of the buildings. The embroidered cross on it suggests that it once held holy relics, which have since disappeared and are now a mystery. Each property is separated from the next by woven wattle fences. We know, from the 5 tons of animal bone found in the excavation, that the people's diet was quite similar to ours, with lots of beef, pork and mutton, as well as poultry and fish. Supplying this food may have been one of the reasons for the major changes in the countryside we see around Jorvik at this time. In this backyard, animals have been slaughtered to provide meat and other resources. Body parts of cattle must have been a fairly familiar sight and smell around Viking Age Europe. As well as supplying meat, cattle carcasses also provided horn and honey, both valuable resources for making everyday items. Stomach contents and cow dung were other byproducts of this slaughter. There must have been loads of flies, breeding in rubbish bins and dumps across the city. The red cow, there on the fence, would have been a regular visitor, scavenging in the city, particularly in backyards like this. Toilets would also have been situated in the backyard. Pits in this yard were clearly used as latrines, as they were full of human waste, as well as moss, which was a type of Viking-age toilet paper. This man here doesn't look too happy to be disturbed, so perhaps we had better move on quickly. Here we are in our final house. In the excavations at Copperhill, we found a few Viking-age musical instruments, including a set of panpipes which can still be played. Music, saga-telling and poetry must have been important in the Viking world. Iceland and Scandinavia have cultures rich in storytelling, traditions that developed in Viking times.
Well, that was absolutely fantastic. What you didn't pick up on the camera there was the stink. They've authenticated how a Viking village would have smelt, and it's quite nauseous, I can tell you. But a fantastic centre, brilliant gift shop as well. So if you're in York, you have to make the Jorvik Centre a place to visit. Top notch and good price wise as well. You're spaced out, so you're not in the crowd. You get one of those little what shall I call it, like a little cradle seat, like a monorail that takes you around, as you saw, and a fantastic experience. So as I say, please go there and visit when you're next in York. I'm going to go and get me lunch now at Greg's of Gosforth, of course, where I live, and I'll see you after I've eaten. Bye for now. One final thing to say about the Vikings before we move on. Apparently the bunch that settled in York were a peaceful bunch, with the idea of settling, and not the marauding barbarians as they're often portrayed. So let's move on, and we're walking now into the area called the Shambles, which is a medieval street, very much intact. A lot of the buildings are originally around the middle of the 13th century. We're coming up to some up ahead here, and it's quite unique. I don't know of anywhere else like it in England. You may know of somewhere that's similar. If so, put it in the comments. But this one here is pretty amazing. There's all sorts of shops here. I've just passed one there that doing ghost things, and this one here is selling fudge, and the one on the other side is selling pies. Again, I don't know of anywhere else that has all these individual shops, craft shops, sweet shops, and you know, it's fascinating. Every single street has something individual in it, not, you know, not dominated by all your supermarkets. This is a convenient place. I've just come across the York's Chocolate Story. It's another good place to visit if ever you're in York, because of course York has a history of chocolate, and it's regarded as the chocolate city, rivaled only by Bourneville, which is the home of Cadbury's, of course, near Birmingham. But it had two giant sweet making companies. The original one set up by Terry's, and of course you'll know the Terry's Chocolate Orange, a very famous confectionery here in the United Kingdom. So that was what they were most famous for. Today Terry's is owned by Nestle. Yeah, Terry's was founded in 1767. So that was the first, and then I'm just checking my facts here. And that was followed in 1862 by a chap called Joseph Rowntree. They were most famous for their pastels, of course, and they are owned by a French food company. They were originally taken over by Kraft, spelt with a K. Food giants, make butter and all sorts and spreads and what have you. But they sold the company in 2016, and it's now a company called Carambar and Company, which is a French company. So both of the York chocolate companies are owned by French companies. But you can book a tour of the chocolate place. They show you how to make chocolate. You get a part of your ticket price. You can actually make your own chocolate lolly, and then you get to take it away at the end. So that's another fascinating place to visit. Anyway, it's drizzling a bit now. But this brand new camera is waterproof, so we shall push on. And as you can see, York's extremely busy today. But like I say, all of these streets have lots of these little unique boutiques and shops. Drake's Fish and Chips. You've got a few of the normal mint velvet there, and Reese or rice, however you pronounce it. And of course I'm nowhere safe without Poundland these days. But look at this, it's a pizza shop with a difference. And York Fine Arts, if you want to buy yourself a picture. This is quite a quiet street, this one. But vinegars and liqueurs. Look at that. I mean, where else would you see that? Here's what I was talking about earlier. You've got Stonegate, that street there, and on this side you've got Minstergate, and on this side you've got Petergate. As I say, all from the Viking gata, the word gata. So the building behind me there is York Minster, and the building on York Minster was completed in 1472. It's a cathedral. It had various names before it became York Minster, but today it's known as the Minster of York. York has many fine buildings, and it's one of the cities that has the most preserved history that I'm aware of. I know London has a lot, but York just seems to have an abundance, and there are many buildings that are wonderful. This is still the Minster here. I'm just having a walk around it, give you a different view. But wherever you look, there's, you know, some sort of history. Oh, it looks as though there's some major work going on the Minster here. And yeah, look, just to prove that the Romans were here, we have a Roman column. It says on the plaque that this Roman column once stood within the great hall of the headquarters building of the fortress of the 6th Legion, whose emblem was a bull in the 4th century AD. It was found in 1969 during the excavation of the south transept of the Minster, lying where it had collapsed. It was given by the Dean and Chapter to the York Civic Trust, who in 1971 erected it on this site to mark the 1900th anniversary of the foundations of the city by the Romans in AD 71. Now that was when the Romans came to York, of course, AD 71. I hope you realise, you guys, here I am on my birthday making films for you to watch. That's dedication, is it not? Nah, I'm only pulling your leg. I would be sitting in the house bored to death with nothing to do. I would rather be out here filming and looking at the wonderful region that we live in. Another fantastic place here. I mean, just look at the contrast in the buildings here. Some of the stone ones, 1891 I can see on some of the stones, and then some Tudor ones. I mean, it's just fantastic. Of course, York is an expensive place to live. All of this is not cheap. I've been to York many times, and there's always something new to look at and discover. Very interesting building here. And this is corner of College Street, it says, so I was going to investigate this. And there's another gate, Dean Gate. There's the Minster in the background, and as I said, from the Viking word gata, which means street. And there we have another gate, this time Swine Gate. So that's obviously maybe some pigs or something were once here. But as I say, they're all over the city. Gate, 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 gate. I'm going to point the camera in the other direction this time so you can see where I'm going instead of just looking at me all the time. Even though loads of people wrote to me and said that you like to see me in the films, I get sick of seeing myself. So look at that. A Tudor pizza place. Unbelievable. As I said, some of these buildings date back to 1200 and before. I mean, obviously they've been spruced up and renovated since then, but the original building was that old. I'm not saying that this particular one is. You can see there from the post above it says 1700 on that one. Occupied by a Chinese laundry. Wilkinson shoes. And then there's a little bit more of a normal shopping experience here. I can see Tesco's looming and Savers. And here we are, a traditional sweet shop. Unbelievable. All of these sweets used to be there when I was a child, vanished from sight, but still alive here in York. Goodram Gate, or Goodram Gate, another gate. And here we are approaching the walls of the city. One of the oldest parts of the city. To get onto the city walls, you have to go up those stairs and onto the top. So that's where we'll go now. Thank you. Oh, we're up here on the city walls, and what's amazing is you can see down into, whether you can see there, you see down into people's gardens and houses. It's unbelievable. I'll just spin this round and let you see the, there, look at that. The Minster, and here the walls. Spin the camera around again. Now, there've been walls around York since the beginning of it being a major settlement. Oh, I'll just have to stop and show you this. Isn't that fantastic? Yeah, there have been walls around York since the Romans came here in 71 AD, but of course not the stone walls that we're walking along, Today they would have probably, knowing the Romans, maybe started off as timber or turf. Romans were very keen on turf walls. And then over time, of course, it would have been replaced with the stone walls that we have today. It's free to walk around, doesn't cost you anything to come up, and you can literally walk around the whole of the city. Up here, and it's a way of avoiding the busy streets if you want to get from A to B, but quite magnificent. Not been on the walls before. I've been to lots of places in York, but today we've done two things that I've not done before: the Jorvik Museum and the walls. Somebody else's back garden there, look at that. Unbelievable. The York itself as a city has the longest intact length of walls of any city in England.
Aye. Aye. Cheers.
The sun's come out briefly.
Thank you.
Another magnificent garden right below the Minster. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And here we're coming to the end of this section of wall anyway. Some gates, I hope we can get out. I'm sure we can. It's in another of these gates, tower gates, that would have being the main access point. Oh yes, wow, look at that. So these would have been the entrances and exits of the city. And there we have the art gallery. Open top bus tours if you fancy one of them. Spin the camera around. So that was amazing. And there's another section on the south side of the city. You can go around, and if I just spin round, you can see there's a section of wall there. So there's another section goes around the west side of the city that's going undergoing some reconstruction at the moment. So that's not accessible today, but you get the idea, more of the same. But so this here behind me, this would have been a gateway, and then there for horse and carts and what have you, and these were one of the main ways into the walled part of the city. So I'm just going to go across the road, try not to get flattened, but thoroughly enjoyable so far this day. This is the King's Manor. A house was built on this site in 1270 AD as a residence for the Abbot of St Mary's Abbey, but was substantially rebuilt in the late 15th century after the dissolution of the monasteries in 1539 by Henry VIII. It was the headquarters of the Council of the North and the residence of its presidents, who added to the buildings. Henry VIII, Charles I and James I stayed here, and since 1963 it has belonged to the University of York. This was one of the places recommended to me, York Museum Gardens. So I'll have a brief walk through here.
Yeah. We tried the split one, yeah. Because I think that's the one that's doing really well. I've got about 5.
Some blue sky at long last. Unbelievable.
There's about 6 sprouts on it.
a rather grand place for Pizza Express. I've been in there before. It's quite good. You have to book though, it gets very busy. And we're heading back towards the railway station. I've got another hour, so I'm hoping maybe to get a quick look in the railway museum before we go. And there is the River Ouse, the very famous river that constantly floods York every time there's a lot of rain. The River Creuse there just setting off. And if I quickly cross the road, let's see. And you can probably see this is the start of another walk along the walls here. As I said, goes round the west and south side of the city. Haven't got time for that now. As I say, I'm hopefully going to get a quick look inside the railway museum before we leave.
There's no reason.
Well, I made it. Here we are in the Railway Museum in York, and some very fine specimens, steam trains from all the years. I'm going to turn this round so you can see. There's a replica of George Stephenson's rocket. So all sorts of trains here from all over the world, actually, not just England. And I think this one, of course, is the big black one. No, I better check on what that one was. But the Japanese bullet there, of course. But this one in particular was similar to the sort of train that my grandfather used to drive when he first began. Obviously it's an early one, 1901, and they keep moving them around, so I used to know where they all were. This one, I think, is another one. Slightly older, that one. It says 1896, so that's not the one I was looking for, but similar to that anyway. This one was built in Britain, but it was intended for use in China, which is probably why it's standing next to the Japanese bullet there. But I think I've spotted the engine over here. And this one is definitely, this particular one was built in 1960, so one of the last steam engines to run before They were decommissioned in favour of diesel. But this was the type of train that my grandfather drove. And it was the Flying Scotsman. And as you can see, this one is in the livery of British Railways, of course, which it was in 1960s, because they were nationalised before the private companies that run the railways today. The museum's undergoing a little bit of a transformation at the moment, so not quite as many exhibits as there normally is. So I'm not quite sure when that's going to finish. They're obviously changing things around, but this is the main hall where all the steam trains are housed. And then there's rooms to the back with model railways and railway memorabilia and stuff like that. So normally it's a very good visit. I would maybe give it a month or two and before you plan your visit here, because at the moment it's not up to its usual impact. Two very famous trains, of course, here. The Mallard, the one that broke the land speed record when it charged up from London to Edinburgh in record time. Can't remember the exact details off the top of my head. Again, someone can leave a comment and just share the knowledge with everybody, but that's the train. So this is another one that my grandfather would have driven. This is belonging to, or has belonged to, Great Western. My grandfather was excused being sent to the war because he was a train driver, and therefore that was an essential job back here. Obviously during the war he was driving troops up and down, but either side of the war he drove passenger trains, and I think, as I said earlier, on the route LNER run today, and if it wasn't that, if I've got that wrong, it was LMS, which was London, Midland, Scottish, up the west side of the country, but it was certainly one of the two. Okay, well, time to head back to the station. I must admit my back's quite sore now. I'm in quite a lot of pain actually. But we'll head back to the station. Plenty of time, there's an hour before my train. So hopefully I can get a sit down and a bit of a rest. But I hope you've enjoyed sharing this birthday trip with me. A trip around York. It was nice to share it all with you. And as I say, we'll head back to the station. Speak to you soon. Well, here we are back at the station, Victorian station, of course. A little bit of time to wait for me train, so I'm just gonna have a seat, rest, and wait for me train.
presents, cards, a candle and a cake, and a good sleep, I think. It's been quite a day. Been good. Weather's been okay. I've enjoyed it. I've walked a long way.